of help, but not strain ourselves in the process, and help more effectively to where we can be beacons of blessing. Are you all ready to be beacons of blessing today? Yeah? I am too. Well, this certainly does not begin with any of our human resources. But being, helping with resources can be helpful, right? We take action, we do certain things, we volunteer with our time, right? Volunteer to help people, we help out friends, maybe, listen to them, might help them out financially, might help them out physically, maybe, have you ever helped a friend move? I've helped plenty of friends move, especially when I owned a pickup truck. I was like on their short list. Then I got rid of the truck and that ended it. Now I'm older and I can't lift heavy stuff. But a helping hand can be useful. And there can be tangible and practical things we can do to assist others. But looking at a person's situation strictly from our human eyes, it often gives the impression that this person is less than complete, or that he or she might be lacking in some area, and therefore needs fixing, right? Because we all know how somebody else should live their lives, right? Better than ours. We know how to, that person ought to do that. We know how to inject our own, our ideas of how certain people should do things. Maybe it's a daughter. In my case, maybe it's a parent. The roles have kind of reversed. So again, we have this idea sometimes where people should or oughta. When we start using those words in our conversations, when friends are seeking advice, then we know we have to kind of check ourselves a little bit, right? We have to kind of go, okay, wait a second. This might not be helpful because number one, it might not be welcome. And number two, I may be doing actually more damage to the relationship than good. So we think we know what's best for the person. And we offer little or a lot of our well-intentioned wisdom. And then we tend to get upset when it's not gratefully received or satisfactorily acted upon. So what we really need here is to be able to see him or her as complete and whole. That's the first thing. We need to be able to see them as complete and whole, because as truth students, right, we believe with the Christ is in each and every one of us as seeds of God, and therefore is that seed of potentiality, that seed that contains all the answers that a person needs. And all we have to do is get out of the way and simply let that seed germinate. So again, seeing through the problem of the truth is seeing with the eyes of the Spirit. And there's only one way we can ever truly help someone else, and it's the only way we can truly help ourselves too. The situation can only change when change comes from within the person involved. I want to say that again because that's hugely important. A situation can only change when the change comes from within the person involved. So what we're talking is a level of consciousness here. And the reason we can't help some people is because their consciousness hasn't quite yet been raised up. They're not at a point where they can accept that, that level of help. But we can still see them as whole. So Jesus' own method, Jesus, our way shower, he had a method of helping others, and it's very clear. He didn't put things right, but he merely saw them right. And so there's an account in the Gospels in Luke chapter 8 of a lady who was in the crowd and she was seeking healing. And the passage goes like this. It happened when Jesus returned that the multitude welcomed him and they were all waiting for him. I mean, if you can imagine thousands of people out here. And behold, there came a man named Jairus, and he was a ruler of a synagogue, and he fell down at Jesus' feet and begged him to come to his house. For he had an only daughter, about 12 years of age, who spent all her living on physicians and could not be healed by any. And then came behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak, and immediately her flow of blood stopped. And Jesus said, "Who touched me?" And when all denied it, Peter and those with him said, "Master, the multitudes press and jostle you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus said, someone did touch me, for I perceived that power has gone out of me. And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him and declared to him in the presence of all the people the reason why she touched him and how she was healed immediately. And he said to her, daughter, cheer up. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace. So again, this woman, I can only imagine the faith it took. I mean, jostled around thousands of people, and she knew if all she had to do was touch him. And Jesus, on the other hand, was getting pushed and jostled around by all these folks, and yet he wasn't panicked. He wasn't. He was centered. And Jesus, in this case, represents our higher consciousness. In Jesus' case, his consciousness, he didn't try and change the woman or fix her. He didn't go back to her and say, hey, I felt you touched me, and I sensed you wanted help, so here's a list of things you got to do right here. Step A, step B, step C. No. This is one of many instances where Jesus affirmed the faith of those who are seeking help, the faith and the belief that they could be healed. He didn't try and change her or fix her. He simply was centered in his awareness of his connection with God. Jesus, because of this, drew people to him. He was like a magnet. You ever have you ever have a time when somebody might have come up to you, maybe in a coffee shop or out and about, maybe at church, and just started pouring their heart out to you? Has anybody had an experience like that? And you're kind of like, okay, this person is sharing a lot of personal information with me, and I don't know them that well. And I consider that a blessing. I consider that a sacred appointment. That you're at that place, at the right time to help that person. And it often comes at a time when we least expect it, when our guard is down, when we let that stuff, we're sort of in that, just centered space. We're just going about our business, and we're calm, we're at peace. And people can pick up on that. I believe that people can pick up on energy. So, again, he was walking in Jesus' countenance, the way he was, the way he walked. His consciousness was fully developed. He knew his connection with God. He was a walking, healing consciousness. Could you imagine that? Just a walking, healing consciousness. Like anybody who touched him would just instantly be healed, because that's where his consciousness was at. He was a beacon of blessing. People could tune into him just as you can tune into your own healing consciousness, or your own consciousness of wholeness, because we're not just talking about physical healing here. We're talking about healing in all areas of life. Finances, relationships, mental health. All these different types of healing can be accomplished by simply raising our consciousness, and we are the beginning of that beacon in consciousness. If we seek it for ourselves, we can begin to develop that. We can be the one reaching out in faith to that consciousness, that Christ within us. And that's where it has to begin before we can do anything to help others. It always begins as an inside job. You ever hear that saying, to help others, you need to put on your own oxygen mask first, right? And that's what we do by staying spiritually connected, by cultivating that. So we don't want to equate healing with a gift that anyone has given to us, because it is, again, a consciousness that can be established and developed in any one of us. Through touching and connecting with our spiritual awareness, our consciousness, which is really within all of us, we can make a connection with it and bring forth that healing result. So are you ready to learn how to become beacons of blessing? I've got a real simple formula for you. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Anybody heard that saying before? And I added another one. Actually, see no evil, hear no evil, think no evil, and speak no evil. And I don't want you to think of this, I used evil, but in unity, we look at evil as simply error thinking. Thinking away from the truth, that anything less that we are whole and perfect creations of God, worthy of all the good. So we have thoughts contrary to that. Maybe we think ourselves unworthy, or we think somebody else is unworthy. That's kind of evil, is how we teach it in unity. So again, thinking the highest and the best, turning away from that. How some cultures have the evil eye to ward off evil, even the eye. So we're turning away from that and turning towards the truth of what we know, right? That we just forget sometimes. Because we all forget. When I'm driving home in traffic, trust me, sometimes I forget. Yes. And so I have to remind myself, I am a beacon of blessing. I am a beacon of blessing, even to the person who just cut me off. So let's start with see no evil. We look beyond, when we see no evil, we're looking beyond appearances. Maybe it's in our own life, in our own situation, which we always want to start off with, right? Jesus said, remove the splinter from your own eye. So we have to start from within. And also, we want to look beyond the appearances of others. What they're going through. Look into maybe beyond their actions, beyond our judgments of their actions. And again, just recognize that truth of who they are. That they are a seed of God. They have that Christ potential in them as well. And maybe we're not speaking with them. Maybe we're estranged. We can still hold that vision for them. We can still hold that prayer without putting in our minds the way we think it ought to turn out or the way they ought to be, but just simply loving and recognizing them as whole creations of God. So the second one, hear no evil. And so I look at a lot of times when we want to help others, we forget to listen. You ever have somebody listen to you and you're trying to talk to them and they just immediately jump in and say, oh, I know what you should do and this is what you ought to do before they get the second sentence out? And I do that too sometimes. We want to fix things because we don't like to see, especially our loved ones, we don't like to see them hurt. So we want to fix things for them, but that's not what we're called to do here. So we say, hear no evil, we call to listen. And not just listen with our ears, we want to listen from the heart. So again, listening with the ears of love, with the ears of the heart, and hearing the hurt. Listening beyond the words, listening beyond their own thoughts, clearing our thoughts, and really listening. And maybe letting them talk and using, we can learn techniques from nonviolent communication, such as tell me more. Tell me more. Oftentimes, in fact, the majority of the time, people have the answers already in them. They just need a good sounding board to kind of figure it out without somebody jumping in. So more often than not, when we listen, a person will come to a different state of consciousness. Plus, we're providing that presence. We're called to be that presence of peace. In prayer chaplains, we talk about holding space in prayer. We're simply holding space for that person. And so when we listen with an open heart, we're holding space. The third one, think no evil. We've got to be aware of our thoughts and our judgments, not only with ourselves. Anybody have an inner critic that won't be quiet? I got one that pesters me sometimes. Oh, you can't do this. Oh, you can't do that. And I don't have to listen to that. But think no evil. So we're aware of our thoughts, and especially when we're looking to help others, to be that beacon of light and love. We want to watch our judgments and our thoughts. And those can really creep in. Like when you're listening from the heart, and you're saying, well, this person kind of deserves it, and their actions have kind of led to this. And so you got these recurring thoughts kind of playing in the background while they're talking. So it's really being aware of that when we're doing that. And we can course correct on that and saying, you know what? You in the background, be quiet. I am a beacon of love and of light. And I see this person in front of me, beyond their actions, beyond what they did. I see them as a perfect and beloved and valuable child of God. And that's the way I'm looking at them right now. And lastly, speak no evil. So we always want to listen first, right? Hear no evil. We want to watch our thoughts, course correct when we need to, those thoughts and those judgments. And lastly, watch what we say. That's a tough one nowadays, huh? Because we got these little things, right? And we got Facebook, and people are like, well, I'm just going to give them a piece of my mind. Click. And guess what? It's out there for a ton of people to see. And you can't undo it. And what we say to people, we can't undo. So we're called to choose our words very carefully if we want to be beacons of light. Is it positive? Is it uplifting? Is it helpful? Not in a way that we think it's helpful, but is it helpful? Is it nourishing? Is it nurturing? Sometimes the best thing spoken is the words not spoken, and just leaving it into silence. We don't always have to fill in the voids with speech. But again, stopping, thinking no evil before we speak. And then we're almost guaranteed to be using words that uplift, words that help, words that soothe, words that heal. So in closing, in our desire to help others, we're most effective when we're able to shift our consciousness to a higher level and view ourselves or the persons we wish to help, that we wish better for, that we wish the good for, to view them from that perspective rather than focus on simply helping alleviate their outer circumstances. This quote from the Quest says, "By allowing our light to shine, we serve as a beacon to draw others to their own light. Then each person who needs help will be free to find his or her own way. It may not be your way, but rather the way which is right for the individual. Your strong faith in the Christ within yourself and in all people becomes a mighty magnet, attracting others to touch the hem of your garment. Your consciousness, which sees them as whole, no matter how dire the need or how desperately you want to help them, your new role is to simply be. That is the best way to help people. It is the method Jesus used, and it's the highest way. You are a beacon of light. Go forth and shine. Namaste.